Shut up and sit down.
Boom! Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dope and Dharma, the Couch Live edition of Dope and Dharma Trinity. It's been a while.
It has.
It's been a long while, and here we are on WOKB 1680 AM or 100.7 FM on the radio dial in the Central Florida area, Trinity.
Or button.
Or
app, or whatever you're listening
app.
to. I'm sure they have an app. Everybody has an app.
Everybody has some sort. I mean, you can be listening to it on the app right now. Some people listen on Facebook Live. Some people listen on the podcast. Some people, when I say radio, they don't even know what radio is. It's all podcast. Even though we're on the radio, people, somehow refer to the show as a podcast. So they can refer to it as a podcast. I don't care. Whatever makes them feel better, Trinity.
Yeah. And then you got people like me who I got made fun of yesterday because apparently there's a beef happening between Kendrick, is it Lamar, I think it is, and Drake, and I've never heard a song from either one of them.
Wait. No, yes, you have.
No,
yes,
I don't listen to the radio. If I'm driving, I listen to Apple Radio, and it's the 80s or 90s station.
Okay, so, well, there's a difference between like I can't identify a song by and I've never heard a song by.
I don't think I've ever heard a song unless it's maybe been playing on a TV show or something in the background. That, like,
I'd play one for you right now if I wouldn't get violated.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
But I don't see too many situations where that would have even happened because I don't listen to the radio, and I'm never really around people listening to the radio, so I don't know how I would have.
I think I can even imagine little Trinity.
Do they sing or do they rap?
Superman, I'm sure he did the Superman dance in your house about 10 years ago.
No idea. Do they sing or do they rap?
I mean, a little both. Okay. I guess you know how rap is these days. A little bit of singing.
I can pick Drake out of a lineup only because I've seen like basketball highlights with him in the background, but I don't even know what Kendrick looks like.
Okay, I'll give you Kendrick Lamar. But not Diddy. I mean, not Drake. Drake is way too.
I haven't heard
way too much longer.
I don't know his songs, but I know what he looks like.
He's made a lot more money and has been a lot more mainstream. So you've seen it.
I've heard the name hundreds of times, but I don't think I've heard a song. But and like I said, I can pick him out just because I've seen him in the Raptors games. Like I've seen the background, he's yelling at refs and stuff.
I'm sure there's thousands of people on WOKB right now going, "Come on, Trinity." Really?
Yeah.
They don't.
I got made fun of heavily yesterday when somebody said that.
I'm sure.
I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I just don't listen to the radio.
Now, in regards to beef between two, I mean, I'm not.
With who?
No, I said in regards to beef between the two, I don't know anything about that. Now, in regards to, being up to date on who's upset with who, and that's not my.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
Now that's a little bit more difficult. Now, what I do know, Trinity, is I know we're talking about addiction like we always do on the Couch Live edition of Dope and Dharma, and there's a name that I'm sure you know, and we'll see if you know this name. P Diddy.
Yes.
I'm sure
you
know.
I know that name. That was back when I listened to radio. I remember him.
Okay, all right.
Him and May. I remember when he was what? Puff Daddy was his name?
Yeah, he's changed his name quite a bit, so I didn't know if you were up to date on how he now wants to be called. Well, I mean, he sure wants to. I mean, he's probably going to change it after all this.
This is a smart thing to do.
Yeah, I would probably. It's probably time for another change, P. It's probably time for another change because he's been having a lot of problems, man. And listen, we're in a country where you're innocent until proven guilty. So I want to respect that, but at the same time, when there's a lot of smoke, it's hard to not imagine some sort of fire going on, right? So it at least warrants a conversation. This is not a P Diddy bashing show today, but it did bring up a topic that often gets talked about, especially like when you're bringing families and you start talking about addiction and you start talking about forgiveness, or you start talking about moving forward. There's a lot of addiction causes a lot of pain. It just causes so many wounds that take people years, if not generations, to heal from. Whether somebody physically harmed somebody, or they abandoned them, or worse. It's really hard to heal and recover from, and so we tend to talk about these things when somebody new in the public eye comes out and says, I have a problem and I'm getting help for it, because you want to respect that, right? There's a part of all of us that want to respect a person wanting to make a turn, because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want people to heal and be better humans, especially if we like them for any particular reason, right? Like, I know there's a lot of you out there that really liked R. Kelly, and then the things just kept coming out, so he just became real difficult to defend and like, right?
What a terrible person he turned out to be.
That's my point. Like, sometimes you could really want somebody to stay the way you have him in your head. Like, I mean, I could still, everywhere I go, I could still hear Michael Jackson music.
Yeah, I'm about to say, that's another name right there that's going to
Yeah.
ruffle some feathers.
You could hear Michael Jackson music everywhere, including in some places that are very conservative in nature, but they'll still play Michael Jackson, because he had the chance to pass away and stay defended till this day. And so we'll never know, maybe, I don't know. But he'll never get his day in court to even fight it, or whatever. And you don't know these things, and again, we have to respect that you're innocent until proven guilty, and he was never proven guilty. We just know he paid a lot of money to people just to shut,
Well, the
shut up.
HBO documentary didn't do him any favors either.
Not any favors at all.
No.
And then, I say R. Kelly because that one, I mean, that man, it was
he's in
that was
prison
hard to
for it.
hear. That was just hard to hear over and over and over again. And so here we are with another person that's, it's pretty up there. This is a very large figure in the music industry, P Diddy. And
Is he still though? Like, I know he was big in like the 90s and early 2000s. Is he still like relevant?
No, I'm not saying he's as relevant, but I mean, he's still relevant enough to constantly be with, always around the people that are relevant.
Right.
Right. I mean,
Well, that's why I don't know if he's like doing
games in Miami with all the 305 guys.
I just didn't know if it was one of those situations where he was still pretty relevant, but behind the scenes, like still producing things. I don't
That's a
know.
great question. I don't know. It's not really my deal. He never really was my music anyway, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But he puts himself in the limelight enough that he's part of pop culture.
I think my perspective on him was slightly tainted years ago, because I have a friend of mine that like grew up in the same neighborhood as him, so he had some stories about him.
Oh, really?
So like I was kind of tainted on him many years ago.
Yeah. So your friend didn't like him too much.
He just had some very interesting stories that at the time didn't connect, but now when certain things are coming out, it makes a little bit more sense. Like, he kind of called it a long time ago. I was like, interesting. Yeah. So
interesting. All right. Well, I mean, listen. Normally, I like to be to each his own. You could like who you like, do what you like, do what you feel, but just don't infringe on other people's rights. And then some of the things that come out with this dude are just a little bit questionable on some ends that I'm just not cool with.
Sure.
Like, first of all, that video. I mean, let's just get right into it. So the question of the day really is, Trinity. Not that addiction is an excuse, but sometimes people, when they hear someone of celebrity, right when they get in trouble, or right when they're about to get the world crumble on them, or when it does crumble on them, all of a sudden it's, I went to rehab, or I'm going to go to rehab.
Yes.
And so some people take that in a very negative way instead of a celebratory way. Like, good, you needed to go a long time ago. Too bad you didn't go before you just did this last thing.
I think it's because it's in like the PR package 101, like step 2 after you apologize is admit to going to rehab.
Right.
Whether you need it or not, just tell people you're going. I mean, I think that's how it's viewed in a lot of circles.
So do you, well, obviously you have issues with some people saying that. Like, do you believe not all? I mean, do you not believe any of them, or is it that some are just more questionable than others?
I would say many of them are much more questionable. I would say that's like the thing to do. I would think for some people it gives them street cred. Like, if you remember back in the day, Akon lied to everybody and said he went to jail and he did all these things to get street cred to sell albums. And then it came out later that he was like, he grew up in like a suburb family with money, and none of that stuff was true. And then I think the other half of that would be some individuals that, power, money gives you power and power corrupts, right? So I think there's some people we've been around some celebrities through the foundation and whatnot, and
Mm-hmm.
we've also been around David Siegel, who's our resident
Mm-hmm.
billionaire here in
Mm-hmm.
Florida. Um, and I've seen the kind of attention that you garner when you
Yeah.
have that kind of wealth.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine when you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are kind of dependent upon you for their livelihood, you don't get told no quite a bit. And so you
Mm.
start to kind of get used to a certain behavior that's just not really acceptable, but they accept it because, well, they want to get paid. They want to make their livelihood.
Right.
And so I personally think what happens a lot of the times is these people get kind of carried away with power. They make some really bad and stupid decisions. And it's so much easier to come out and say, hey, I've got a problem. I'm going to go to rehab than it is to say, hey, you know what? I got carried away. I made stupid decisions. And, that's just, I turned into a person that I didn't think I wanted to be.
Right.
Like, I think it's easier to say just, hey, I've got a problem. I'm going to rehab. Because at that point, as you said, I think in general, we as a society want to respect the person who admits that they have a problem and goes to rehab. We've been trained to be like, hey, that's good for you. That's awesome. To whereas we're a little bit more reluctant to clap for the person who just says, hey, I got power hungry and turned into like a bad person. So
Could you say both, maybe?
sure. I mean, two things can be true at the same time, right?
Right. Right. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very possible. I mean, did you see the video of his, little apology thing or whatever?
I might have seen like a clip or something,
Yeah, him
but I
just
mean,
saying, "I take full responsibility. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just letting you know that I'm taking full responsibility. I'm horrified by the behavior."
it's my opinion though with him, just to be honest with you,
Okay.
like from what I've heard so far, from what you told me, and the little bits that I picked up over the last however long,
Hmm.
I just think he's knee deep in it, and he's just trying to figure out some sort of way to soften the blow. I mean, because
Yeah.
he went from a relative darling of the media and kind of like relatively famous and making
Right.
money, had
Right.
his fingers in a lot of different pies,
Yeah.
to now he's being compared to like R. Kelly and Jeffrey Epstein. He's in the same
Yeah.
conversation with them.
Right.
I'm seeing like news footage of them raiding his house with the FBI. He's on a
Yeah.
plane flying out of the country. Like, it doesn't look good. And so I think
Yeah.
for him, it feels to me like he's just knee deep in some stuff, and he's trying to figure out what can I do to salvage any sort of my reputation or money that I can. So I think, coming out being an apology, being
Right.
very conciliatory. Like, yeah, it makes sense. Do I believe it? Yeah, probably not. But maybe that's my pessimistic side, or my cynical side coming out.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, you bring up a lot of good points because, I mean, look, he wasn't even admitting to this until the video came out.
Exactly.
So once you see the video, it's hard to deny, but
Yeah.
uh, I don't know. I got a feeling I would have stayed denying no matter what. Even after the video, I'd have been like, "No,
Well, the video's grainy. You could totally say that's not him.
I would have still denied it." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But that's just me in the sickness that I had. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Even me, healthy, might still deny it. To be honest with you, but he admitted it, and let me tell you something. There's a big difference when you look into someone's eyes and when they talk. And I don't think he's that good of an actor to do what he did on that video. I think he did a good job on the video, to be honest with you. I think at least the clip I saw, I didn't see much. I think it was less than a minute. But from what I did see, it looked to be genuine. Now, I'm not saying that excuses any behavior, but
Well, do you
I
do
deal
you,
with difficult people anyway that have
well,
done
okay,
horrific
so put
things.
on your other hat here. Not
Which
your
hat you want me to put on? Now my Phillies, because we're a great
yeah.
baseball team and we keep winning.
I'm saying, so do you think that he is genuinely like regretful of who he became? Or do you think he's regretful that, oh, I got caught. It's all blown up right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. I'm not saying where like the source of the regret. I'm just simply
Okay.
saying
Sure.
he's feeling it,
Okay.
whatever the reason is.
Oh, he's definitely feeling it.
Whatever his reason is, what I'm
Yeah.
saying is the feeling, the emotion he's expressing is
Sure.
genuine.
Sure.
It may be a truly narcissistic emotion,
Sure.
coming from a place of I can't even lie to these people. These people aren't getting it. But what I'm saying is that part, it's not that part's not phony.
Sure.
But yeah, the problem that we all struggle with when it comes to these kinds of deal is that, well, yeah, you didn't say anything until you had no way out,
Yeah.
right? But what we have seen is even people that have no way out still stay lying. Like who was that actor that we all wanted to love, man? And remember when he said Trump dude, people beat him up or whatever. What is that actor?
Jussie Smollett.
Yeah. Like we wanted to like him and believe him, and he just denied it. He still denies it.
So he loses in court too.
But that kind of person, that's a different kind of person, right? So that person continues to deny it to this day.
Well, even that one I would argue is different though, because like for that one, he was just lying to get fame or whatever. To whereas P Diddy actually like hurt people and infringed upon them.
True, but what I'm saying is when you're caught, you're caught.
Yeah, definitely you're caught.
Just own it.
Yeah.
So you can move past it. Like do what Bill Clinton did. Bill Clinton owned it and got away with it because he owned
it. So what your definition of it is? I love that.
I mean, he truly owned it, right? At the end of the day, Bill is living Bill's life.
Yeah.
Like still wide open, still getting 6 figures to speak. It didn't really affect Bill.
No, I mean he did get impeached though, right? Not that it mattered. I mean, it's on paper only.
Means nothing.
Yeah, it's on paper only.
Yeah, who's not going to get impeached anymore?
I mean, the only thing I think it affected is his home life.
Going to be impeached.
It might have affected his relationship.
But even then, she stayed with him.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, you just got to own it. You got to own it.
Sure.
Right. The sooner you own it, then you can deal with the aftermath quicker. But when you fight it, like the other guy that's on the news recently. Great actor, movies, A-lister. Oh my God, me and my memory, brother. I can't even. He was recently canceled. All the young guys and young boys that said he sexually assaulted them.
Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, Kevin Spacey.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like
I think he won.
It's like I'm playing a game of bigger than a bread box. Yeah.
But I think Kevin Spacey actually won his court case though, didn't he?
He keeps winning them.
Yeah. So that one to me is an interesting one. I know recently a documentary or whatever came out on HBO where they cover it. I've yet to watch it, but with him, I'm very interested actually to learn more about him because I don't think he came out and blamed any alcoholism.
No, he's not blaming any of that. No, he's just simply denying it.
And he's denying it. And we heard of, obviously, we have a mutual friend who years and years ago, before any of this stuff came out, made comments about how he was a little sketchy. But then, I don't know, man, he's winning a lot of his cases. And some of the stuff that I heard at the time, I was like, it didn't really sound terrible to me. Like it just sounded like maybe misinterpretations or whatever.
A 14-year-old boy might be a little.
That one I didn't hear. Like I said, some of the ones I heard, I didn't really think much of. Other ones.
That's how it first came out. It was the first came out. An adult actor said when he was 14, he inappropriately made advances on him. But look, he's got cases coming up in Europe like this year still.
He got canceled.
Constant more cases keep coming. This is an individual constant more. I guess what I'm saying is like some people own it and then some people fight it to the end. And he's just saying, nah, I'm not a sexual predator. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not an addict. I'm nothing what you say I am. So I'm going to defend it.
Which is weird because he's winning his cases, but he's not winning his stature. Like he's not back in movies or anything, even though he's winning cases.
He'll get it.
If he wins them all, I gotta assume so, right? Like,
he'll get it. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, he's still relatively young and he's got a lot of back. I mean, the only reason I even mention his name because he's back in the news again because Sharon Stone and Liam Neeson and others are just defending him. They're actually coming out and saying, bring him back.
Yeah, I can think of a few off the top of my head of people who were quote unquote canceled that owned it, that didn't blame addiction of any sort or anything else. They didn't blame anything. They just said, hey, I made bad decisions. One of the ones that come to mind right now, right off the top of my head, was Louis C.K. He kind of admitted what was going on, and he's actually back in the limelight now. Like he's actually back into a lot of people's good graces and making money again too.
He was never in that kind of limelight though. He was in a light, but not A-list. He's not an A-list.
He wasn't A-list, no, but he was.
He's not even Russell Brand. He's not even Russell Brand status, which Russell Brand did the same thing. You know what I mean? Russell Brand, famously went into rehab. What is it? The A-lister, Iron Man himself,
Robert Downey Jr.
went into rehab famously. That was that's probably the largest.
Him and Anne Heche, I think, were the other one. Because Anne Heche woke up in like somebody else's house.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of them.
But like Robert Downey
Um,
Jr., for instance, an
mhm.
example, if it was widely documented, he had a problem. Like he
Right,
didn't just
right,
come out and say
right,
something to take the heat off. It was obvious that he had
right.
a problem. Like, and that's
Well,
the thing is
yeah,
we haven't read any stories of like P. Diddy waking up in somebody's garage somewhere
right,
or him being found like looking like a homeless man on the side of the road or something.
right,
We haven't heard the telltale signs of like, hey, this is a problem. What
right,
we've heard is like things like Tyra Banks, throwing on a phone at somebody, like diva behavior.
right, right.
So like that's where I think a lot of people, myself included, have a problem with it.
And I think the other place that people have a problem with is that there's still, addiction doesn't mean violent behavior towards a female
Yeah,
or a child. I mean, and that's why the second part of the whole question is really like, is it really an excuse or just at least a reason, or not a reason, but at least gives you an understanding of why the negative behavior exists in the first place. Like it is a contributing factor to the negative behavior. I mean, like if I'm a volatile person, which I have been, when I'm using, I am more volatile.
sure.
That's one of the reasons I'm sober, because but the volatility already existed. It wasn't like it didn't exist. I was volatile with or without substances. It's just substances took the filter off that would
Yeah.
normally be there,
Well, you're
right?
tiptoeing into like a family argument I had years ago when my aunt tried to come and defend my father because she thought that he had some sort of mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. Like you have moments of sobriety, you have
Right.
moments of clarity, and you can remember, hey, I did these things. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're supposed to, at that point, when it comes to accountability, say, hey, in those moments of clarity, you can look back and realize my behavior was completely unacceptable.
Right.
And it's what you do at that moment. In your moment of clarity, when you do have that moment
Right.
of, hey, do you do something about it? Does your sober, sane, healthy self do something about it? Or do you just brush it under the rug and keep doing it? If you brush it under the rug and keep doing it, you get what you deserve. If in those moments of clarity, because you're not in a constant state 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of I don't know, you have
Ooh,
moments.
ooh.
Yeah,
Oh,
you have moments, dude.
I don't know.
They might be few and far between, but you have
When
moments.
when you add other types of things that create the same dopamine effect, though, when
Sure.
when you add power, prestige,
Sure.
money, drugs, alcohol, so you got a lot of different drugs right there. So to say you're never no, if you're in that, you're always under the influence of something, whether it be power, prestige, drugs, alcohol. There's always an intoxication, right? Because you can't move. And these guys' level of fame, you can't move without getting some sort of drug kickback at you, meaning power, fame, the ability, fu money,
Yeah, but P
you
Diddy
know,
wasn't born rich.
no,
He
no, no. But the murder of his good friend made him very rich. And so once that happened, which I'm sure all those stories are going to come back out little by little to say maybe P Diddy is the one that did it. I'm not the one saying it, spreading it. I've already heard people talk like that. Is why I'm
yeah,
saying it. You know, but once you do become rich and you start soaking it in, it's hard. You can't go back to broke.
sure.
Going back to broke is very difficult. It's like
Yeah,
have you listen? It's like traveling out of this country and trying to use a bathroom made for a third world country. It's very difficult to use a
yeah,
bathroom in a third world country once you've used an American toilet. It just
sure.
is. You know what I mean? And so those are the things that I'm talking about. Is that there's an intoxicant with being who he is, and for him to at least come out and say I went to rehab, to me at least that's a positive movement forward. I'm not saying it excuses any behavior, by the way.
Sure.
Nowhere near does it excuse any of his behavior. Um, who he is and what he did, he still has to pay every bit of consequence you should still have to pay. First of all, I'm not even a fan of the insanity plea being used ever. I don't think if you commit a crime because of insanity, you should be allowed to walk free just because you were insane, you didn't know what you did. No, that makes you more dangerous to me. I
Right.
think you should be even more locked up.
Right.
Matter of fact, don't just lock him up in that cage. Put 4 more cages around that kind of individual,
Yeah.
because that person can bite its own owner, kind of thing. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like
Sure.
the dog that can bite its owner is the most dangerous dog out there, right?
Sure.
So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. But look, there's going to be a lot of conversation about, all right, well, what is he really admitted to? Rehab for what? Because it's very different. Like, what was it? Who is it that went to rehab and it was like, oh, my sex? Oh, like, one of my favorite people, Tiger. Tiger Woods. You know, like when he went to rehab, it was like I went to rehab, but we knew he had pill addiction, right? Those pills, but it was like the sex addiction thing. It's like that's when it's a little bit more like really, that's maybe, yeah, but maybe you're also addicted to what that intensity when he plays gives you, and so he's that level of intensity that some of these people perform at. That's the actual drug. All this other stuff is other drugs. None of these drugs can beat the drug of winning and losing.
Sure.
That drug is intense. Like you said, the power and control drug. That's a lot more of a powerful drug than even cocaine.
Well, they said power corrupts.
Yeah, it does something.
They always say you want to see who somebody is, give them a little bit of power and see what they do with it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's obvious that some of these people fail.
Right.
But I think that's the question, right? Like that's the age-old debate. I think that based upon just the direction we've already gone, and I'm assuming I'm on the right track, but that is the age-old question: is like how much, what perspective do we approach it with when we've been wronged or hurt by somebody, or we've seen wrong or hurt done by somebody, and there's a mental health issue or addiction issue. Like,
right.
Where is that line? Like how much, what's acceptable, what's not? And I think that's a very gray area. I think it's very hard. And I don't know if there's a right answer, to be honest with you.
I think that's where the two things can be true come into play.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel for you. I feel for you that you have this disease and disorder that puts you in these situations, but I feel for the victim more.
Yeah.
And because there is a victim, then you have to pay the consequence, whether you were drunk or high or whatever. Let's do another story that probably, I don't know if it made national news or whatever, the Ocala incident where the guy was driving a truck. He ran into a bus full of migrant workers, and it killed 8 of them?
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, okay. If he comes out and does a video and says, I'm an alcoholic, I drink, I feel horrible, I want to go to rehab. Hopefully they allow me to go into treatment while I'm in prison and deal with my issue, because regardless, I want to be a better person, whatever. It still is okay. Yeah. But you still have to pay the price.
Yeah.
Right. You still have to go to prison because you just killed, multiple people due to that drinking behavior and getting behind the wheel of a car. And that to me is a huge. I hope it's a national case.
Why hasn't that ended? By the way, like
what
drunk driving? Like it's so easy nowadays with Uber and like, why is that still a thing? Like I don't even understand. That to me is just almost inexcusable. Yeah. In today's world, it's so easy to get a car to go somewhere or to get an Uber or whatever. Like, if you want to drink, whatever, that's a whole different debate, I think. But to get in behind the wheel, like that is like the utmost selfish, just terrible decision. Alcoholic or not, man, you still have some sort of intelligence behind there. Like you had enough intelligence to get your way to the bar and buy something or whatever. So you can't tell me that you could string together thoughts to get yourself there and get intoxicated, but you can't string together thoughts of, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this because I could kill people. Like at some point, dude, just grab an Uber, bro.
I really feel that that's a huge reason why the newer generations for the last 2 have been moving towards that gentrification kind of neighborhoods where the place they hang out, the place that they work, and their home is all within walking distance.
Right.
I really feel like those generations that have created that infrastructure or that kind of ecosystem, I think that has a lot to do with it. They want to be able to go have drinks and go home safely, right? They even go out using Ubers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, you should know that you've been drinking too much, give someone your keys. It's don't even go without already knowing I'm Ubering there, right? That's true responsibility.
Yeah, it's just weird to me that that's still a thing. Granted, I'm sure they've gone down in numbers, but I don't know.
I'm going to say that drinking and driving is the equivalent of smoking tobacco the old-fashioned way.
You're like a pariah if you do that now.
Right.
If you light up a cigarette, like the whole room is just going to look at you. Like,
you're still drinking and driving, really? Yeah. You're supposed to drink in Uber. That's the vaping way.
Exactly.
Like if you vape, you probably Uber.
Yes.
But if you smoke a cigarette, you probably still drink it dry.
Assumption.
That's probably the meter. Like if I'm watching you at a bar and I see you smoking a cigarette, I think you're probably going to get in your car.
Yeah, I would feel like that's a safe assumption. Who knows if it's right or wrong, but that just feels good to say.
Feels
like,
right, right?
Yeah, it feels right.
Feels right. And
Feels like I'd win that bet more often than not.
And this is a generation of feelings, so we're all about feelings. We're not about facts anymore.
No,
we're about feelings.
Like
so if I feel it to be Trinity, then it is.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to claim it. I'm just going to say that's what it is. So, right now I just upset everybody out there that's smoking Camels and Marlboros right now. They're like, what are you trying to say? I'm like, I'm not, I'm just saying. Change is hard. I get it. I get it.
Sure.
But Trinity said get an Uber, and I think you should.
Yeah, it feels like a no-brainer to me. I mean,
right.
I think it's, if it's your issue and it's destroying you, that's one thing. I feel bad for you. I'll be there. But once your issue starts destroying other people who had nothing to do with it, I think that's a little bit harder to forgive for a lot of people.
Right.
Because, if you want to self-destruct, man, hey, there's only so much I could do. But when you start hurting other people, it's just like, come on, man. Like, that's not cool.
Then the real big question it really is, then how come we can't start healing when we're the only ones hurting, right? When it's only hurting us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we really do believe we're raised in a vacuum sometime. We really believe that this is my life. I should be able to do how I want to do it. I'm not really affecting you. No, you are.
Yeah.
The fact that I know you and I'm watching you self-destruct hurts me. I have multiple people in my life right now that just don't get it. They just won't get it. I mean, they continue to use the same way. They continue to wreck vehicles or hurt their relationship. And in certain moments, they'll call me and be like, what do I do? I'm like, really? I mean, come on. Is that even a question? I'm going to tell you the same thing today that I tell you every day. There's one thing to do, and this is the path, and that's how you do it. If you don't want to do that, then you really are not asking me. What you're saying is, how do I get all of that to just stop? How do I you can't. It doesn't work that way. And that's the problem with addiction and disease. It's like you on your own don't need to do this because you didn't get here on your own. You didn't start drinking in a vacuum. You didn't create alcohol. You didn't make the bottles that it got put in or the cans that it got put in and the bars. You didn't build all that infrastructure of drinking. You didn't build the infrastructure of drug use. You didn't create the entire scenario. You simply joined in an existing culture. And you started playing in a culture that you thought was good for you. And you didn't think that it was going to negatively affect your life in the way that it has. I get that. I get that you didn't know how to tell the future. None of us do. We all hope for the best. We all wish that we could pick this up and put it down. Pick this up and put it down. What you thinking?
Well, you're touching into the same thing that we used to talk about when we were doing a pay program, and that is everybody thinks they're the outliers, man. They all think that they're the Michael Jordan of whatever it is that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever wants to think that they're average or they're the statistic. It's like they all like
right. Until
like,
you are.
Well, when you were talking about that, like, so for instance, when I talk to my kids, right, one of the things that my kids, I guarantee you can ask any of them right now, you could start the phrase and they could finish it because I've said it to them so many times. And it's, I don't care about the 1,000 times that it went right. I care about the one time it's going to go wrong. So for instance, like my kids would always want to like get into the front seat or wear no seatbelt or something trivial.
Right.
And I would say to them, it's like, look, I don't care how many times, you might be with this other person and do it 1,000,000 times. I get it. Right. But what I care about is the one time it doesn't. Is it worth it for you? If it goes, catastrophically bad, are you okay with the consequence versus the reward? Is it worth it to you? And if it is, then hey, man, have at it. If it's not worth it, then you need to think about it. Because we are average, right? That's the whole purpose of the term is average. At some point, statistics are probably going to catch up to you. And if you
Right.
keep, and I think that for a lot of these celebrities, I think that's probably part of the problem, right? Is they've gotten away with so much for so long that they don't realize or they forget that it's going to catch up to you at some point. At
Right.
some point, that luck that you have is going to run out.
Mm.
Like, I'm not delusional when I talk to my kids and stuff. I think back to the things that I did when I was growing up, and part of me wants to let my kids kind of have a little bit more freedom per se as far as some of the bad decisions that they make, and I try to keep that open the best I can. However, I also look back at my own life and realize I'm not here right now because I'm just better than everybody. I'm here because I was incredibly lucky.
Right.
There were so many things that I did, especially when I was on the motorcycle. I really shouldn't be here. I'm not here right now because I'm just some awesome. No, I'm here because I got straight up just lucky. For whatever
Right.
reason, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. And I think when you're younger, you can kind of fool yourself into thinking that you are great and
Right.
you're just, it's not going to happen to me, but it will, right? Like the cemetery, the morgue, the hospitals are
Yeah.
full of people who didn't think it was going to happen to them. They
Yeah.
all, like, nobody walks out the door thinking, hey, something terrible is going to happen to me today. And it does. And so I think for a lot of these celebrities and stuff, I think they live a lifestyle where they have just immense amounts of power and money and influence, and a lot of people don't want to tell them no, and they get caught up into the bad behavior. A lot of them get celebrated for that behavior. They get more attention, they get more money. It's like accepted, and the more out of control you are, the more fame and stuff you start to kind of get. And then I think somewhere that line gets blurred and they forget there are consequences to my behavior, and it's going to catch up to me because the world at large doesn't care how famous you are. It doesn't care how much money you have. At some point, it's going to run out. And I think that that's what happens for a lot of them. I think there's abuse there. I don't know how
Mm.
many of them are strictly, from the definition of it, I don't know how many of them have addiction issues,
Right.
but I know a lot of them have abuse issues. They abuse the alcohol, they abuse the drugs, they get caught up into the partying, and it never occurs to them that just because I went to this party and I acted completely belligerent and got way too intoxicated, I was fine. Doesn't mean that the next time it's going to go that way.
Right.
The very next time you could have done exactly what you did 1,000 times before, but this time luck isn't on your side and something terrible happens. And watching the video of P Diddy when he did the hallway incident, I watched it briefly. I wasn't sure if it was him or not when I watched it, but now that we've talked about it, I recall I did see it. That didn't look like an intoxicated man to me. That looked like somebody who's done it a bunch of times and just got away with it a whole bunch of times. It looked, and she didn't look like that was the first time either, because she didn't react with this based upon body language. And obviously, I'm reading into it. I didn't speak to them. I didn't know, but just from visually looking at it, it didn't appear to me that was the first time that happened. He was very, very comfortable. Didn't seem to care. Like if if my wife and I are even having like just an emotional, like somewhat moderately heated discussion in public, I'm looking around like, hey man, I'm not trying to have an argument in front of the world here. He was in a public hallway, like, and he didn't seem to care that anybody could come out their doors at any given moment.
He knew enough to hold the towel around
Yeah,
him. I
yeah.
mean, when you're
So
out of your mind, screw the towel.
yeah. So for me, I just, that didn't look like addiction to me.
Right.
That looked like power. It never occurred to him that he's going to be held
And-
accountable to his behavior.
Right. And
That's what it looked like.
And I'm not saying he said that was addiction, and we don't have him saying that at that specific time that he was
Sure.
drunk or high. What I'm saying is that he did say that he went to rehab because
Yeah.
those were the darkest days of his life. And,
Sure.
and what I would say is, well, yeah, because you're being held accountable for a lot of things that happened within that time period now, and you were enjoying that period of time that you can now call the darkest days of your life. But at that time, you might have felt really good about it. Because I got to admit, my supposedly darkest days of my life were really fun days. So, when I used to go to meetings and I'd hear people say, my worst day sober is better than my best day intoxicated or, high or drunk, I'd be like, oh, hell no, I can't say that. No,
Yeah.
I'm going to admit I had some great times, man, because
Sure.
from the perspective that I was coming from, I was doing exactly what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, and I was living it up, man. So I'm not going to say but that doesn't mean that I'm celebrating it or want it again. What I'm saying is that I'm just acknowledging what it really, really was. Now, in retrospect, do I prefer this? Yes. But if you would have said, you can have what you were doing then without any consequence ever, spiritually, emotionally, individually, nothing.
Ooh, that's a hard one.
I'd probably go back to doing that
Yeah,
if
that's a hard one.
if there would be no morality complex, no legal authority. No, I mean, really, come on. I mean, so I'm just being honest.
Yeah,
That's honesty.
Yeah. I mean, I look back at
when
my
I hear
days.
the other stuff, that doesn't sound honest to me.
I look back at my days, and yes, it was way more stimulating than it is now.
Yeah.
But the potential consequences back then, I don't want anything
Right.
to do with today's world. Like, I'm good.
Yep.
But yes, that's a tough one.
And if emotionally you felt fulfilled while doing that, and it wasn't an empty void that stayed void, that if what you were doing actually filled that void, you'd still, come on, man. I mean, really?
Yeah, that's a hard question. Like, if I could go back and do all the same behaviors, but have zero accountability, like, it didn't hurt anybody, including myself. There was it was just straight up. That's a hard question.
And so because that doesn't exist like that, that's the wish that we all had when we were out there, right? That was the
Yes.
dream,
Yes.
right? I just wanted everybody to shut up and leave me alone, right?
Well, that's the lie too, right? That's the lie we
That's the
told
lie.
ourselves.
That's the con. That's the manipulation. But and so what I'm saying is, I can get why he's now saying those are the darkest days, but that's in retrospect, man. We can all play armchair quarterback. When you're in the moment, though, man, you were doing what you felt like was the right thing to do, Diddy, man. And you felt like at that moment that girl needed to respect you in a way that she wasn't, and you were going to let her know that was unacceptable, and that's what you were doing, man. And so how you come back from that, I that's on you. Do I know people that have hurt women and have come back and been very productive, healthy people? Yes, I do know people that have now done that, but it took me years to really view them in the way that I view them now. It took like a lot of years of seeing good behavior, what I would consider good behavior and healthy behavior with a significant other, with the same significant other that doesn't have those issues, that is not reporting such behavior, to believe that you can come from that. Because I think there are certain people that can't come back from certain behavior because it's too deep. And the kind of work that you'd have to do to get that deep, most people aren't willing to do. They're just not willing to do the kind of work that it takes to break out of that kind of traumatic energy that must exist within you, whether you got it from your family, whether you got it from your neighborhood, whether you got it from self-serving stuff. I don't know. But somehow there's a traumatized thing going on that you got to heal from. And I wish you much luck in healing from it, Diddy, is what I'm saying. And anybody like a Diddy out there. But if you're doing Diddy activity, but you don't have Diddy money, good luck with that.
You won't make it as long. That's
yeah. And if you're staying with somebody that's like a Diddy and he don't have Diddy money, you pick up the phone.
I think I'd want to hear why.
Get out of there. Get out of there. Get out of there. No, we know the why. The why is
I'm saying
that's how much you value yourself. You value yourself so low that you're willing to stay in that scenario.
No, I meant the why as far as he's saying it's his darkest days, right? I'd want to know why. Yeah. I'd want to hear his explanation because my gut instinct tells me that it's his darkest days because he got caught and it's all coming down on him now. Like my gut tells me, and this is just, I don't know the dude. So my gut tells me that it's his darkest days because that's what the right thing to say right now is.
Right.
Like, once again, if he got a free pass and he knew there was no consequences, would he go back to it? That to me is the why. Like, I wouldn't know why the darkest days are. Because we've all done that, right? We've all done fun things or things or whatever. And then afterwards, when the consequences hit us, we think to ourselves, oh gosh, I shouldn't have done all those things. What? But oftentimes we say to ourselves, we shouldn't have done those. Not because they're terrible things to do and they were wrong and they were bad, morally speaking. No, it's because it led to the consequences I'm dealing with.
Right. In
other words, I'm more disturbed by the consequences than the act or the behavior. And that to me is where the disingenuous part comes in. Like, if you don't truly acknowledge the reason why the behavior was bad in the first place, how much growth are we really having?
Right. Well, it takes you back to the little playground. We're all little kids and you trip somebody and they fall. It's funny. It just is, whether you want to believe it or not. To a little kid, when you trip somebody and they fall, it's funny. But if they bust their face and their tooth pops out and they're crying and you get in trouble, it's not funny anymore.
Yeah.
At least not at that moment.
Sure.
But you give it a few days, You give it a few days or a few years, and you talk about that incident again. Guess what? It becomes funny again.
Sure.
You start telling the story later on in life. You go, hey, remember that time I tripped your tooth pot? I was like, oh my God. And then you laughing and joking about it again.
Sure.
Unfortunately, this will never be funny. What he did will never be funny.
No.
And that should never be funny to any of you. Anybody that can watch that kind of video and feel like that other individual is deserving it all, you're not a person I ever really want to associate with, because that's somebody's mother. I view all women like my mother or my wife or my children. I'm a girl dad. So I view women very, very differently today than I used to. Not that I ever viewed them in the way that P Diddy views them, but I know I hold them on a much greater pedestal than I ever did before I had daughters. And I know that when I see a woman getting hurt like that, I just think, man, where's that father at right now? Because I'm hoping that the reason she's getting beat like that is not because she has daddy issues. Because if that daddy knew that what you did to your daughter put her in that situation, you're the one beating your daughter. You're not there. You're not the one physically hurting her. You're not the one physically hitting her. But because of your lack of love and you're showing the protection and support to your daughter, she goes out and seeks it in other men that are doing this to her. That's on you, kid. So that's the kind of stuff that I feel all men, be men, stand up, be responsible, be good fathers. What is that Mayer song? Be good to your daughters or something like that?
Yeah, it's something like
John Mayer song.
Yeah.
They probably play that John Mayer song all the time on this radio station at WOKB, don't they?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe the remix version.
Right.
All right, so what else? You got any last words?
Yeah, man. Accountability is a thing, man. We talk about accountability for others, but we really kind of need to take it for ourselves. Set aside the thoughts and the feelings and
Right.
truly just analyze, hey, man, was what I did right or wrong?
Right. And my final words is, look, I don't feel that there's anything you can do to excuse your behavior when you were drinking and drugging or doing whatever you were doing, high on power, whatever it is. I don't think there's anything you can do to forgive that. So don't ask for forgiveness from other people. But what you need to do is you need to heal regardless, because if you don't, it'll continue. And then your life just becomes meaningless. Make meaning out of it. Whatever you need to do to make meaning out of it. Whether that means you stay sober and you start giving to charities that have abused women. Do whatever you got to do. Diddy, you want to give back? Look, you could put millions of dollars into charities that would never get that money, all because you're trying to make amends internally to yourself. But don't expect anyone else in the world to be okay with that ever. That's their prerogative, and they can choose to forgive you or choose to view you differently or ever give you another dollar or a cent. That's on them. But what's on you is you should always be healing. You should always be healing, and you should always be growing. And this is your opportunity to grow. And if you're Diddy like out there, this is your opportunity to take his story, make it your own, and grow from it before you're actually 100% Diddy like. And with that, we'll kick it back to the producers over there at WOKB 1680 AM here in the Central Florida area, or 100.7 FM. Adios, amigos. It's time for a taco. Goodbye.